Yo, what it is, what it is. Welcome back to Avery Sports Show on a fun Sunday afternoon. And those of you who know Avery Sports Show, if you know the history of my podcast and what I've done, I was one of the few podcasts in Canada that had done extensive work covering the Arena Football League in the late 2000s, early 2010s. So when I heard the AFL was going to come back for its third incarnation, I was fired up. I was happy. I was excited to see what was going to happen with the AFL returning. Unfortunately, it has been anything but spectacular. It's been a league that's come back to uncertainty, unanswered podcasts, players being cut, makeshift fields here. So I want to have on someone who's been on the ground floor doing a lot of good reporting work. Anthony Carter. He is the founder of Arena Insider, and he's also the founder of X1 Media out in Philadelphia. Anthony, welcome to the podcast. How you doing, good sir?
I'm doing great. Happy Sunday, and hope you all are doing well as well.
Yeah, of course. I'm following you for a little bit here, and I've been seeing how with the Arena Football League, first of all, for those who don't know, I mentioned at the top, the league came back. It was announced last year it would be returning. A company had purchased the IPs with plans to revive the AFL. They came back this year in 2024, 16 teams. They had announced a NFL Network deal. And Anthony, as you've seen in your reporting, a lot of this hasn't happened. The NFL Network games have been scrapped. There have been games in which players have not been paid. With Philadelphia's case, the entire team was replaced by a replacement team out in Dallas at the last minute before their game against Louisiana, which also saw them using what looked like Charlie Brown makeshift goalpost rebound nets, which were not centered for this game. Just what's it been like for yourself to be covering a league that has stories seemingly every day, from rumors of more teams folding, players saying they're not getting paid, to a commissioner in Lee Hutton III who people are having a hard time trying to find?
Yeah, and as you just mentioned, that's the biggest, not, I don't want to say red flag, but what's missing, the biggest puzzle piece that's missing to all of this is the league's response. And as a journalist, it's actually hard covering some of these stories because I do want to be fair to the league. We have to get both sides. But at the same time, when you have a lot of players, a lot of players reached out to me but wanted to remain anonymous because they're fearing of retaliation. So you have that aspect as well. Then you have some players that don't care what happens, but they want to advocate for their teammates and for the other players around the league. Have coaches calling it out, and then now you have owners as well. It's been a lot. It's been a lot, and I've seen before the season their communication lacking trying to reach the league office for just looking at for regular coverage, trying to interview, the commissioner and the executive, because this is a big deal. It's been going since 2019. So the revival, it's a huge deal. So when I haven't gotten any communication back, no one's messaging me back, no one's emailing, website didn't seem set up, standings, scores, anything like that. It just seemed like if this was a rush season from the beginning, and then we see everything happening after that. It's crazy. Never covered anything to this extent like that.
Yeah, no, it's very strange. And when it first started, when this league was first revived, it seemed like things were going the right track. There was tweets from people of power in football like Troy Vincent. He was tweeting out that there's gonna be coverage, and it seemed like it's gonna be done right. But as you mentioned, more and more has come out about this league not being well done. And like, when did you first learn, Anthony, about the troubles? Because we know that it's happening more and more now. We're hearing more news from players, from staff. But when did it first come onto your radar that things weren't on the up and up in extent of this going very smoothly?
I think it started the week leading up to week one.
Mm.
A lot of it first opened up that the an agent that was representing one of the quarterbacks for the Philadelphia Soul publicly called out the league that they said, and mostly the Soul, but it was also the league attached because the league owned the Soul at the time. But he was basically just saying that the Soul doesn't have a roster, the head coach resigned, all of this and this, and people haven't been getting paid, they've been kicked out. So that really kind of started everything. Then we started seeing things posted online. So I reached out to couple player on the soul and a couple players, excuse me, on the soul, and they confirmed everything about them being kicked out of the hotel. They haven't been getting, well, you don't get paid for training camp according to the players, but the coaches haven't been getting paid. There's just been a lot of unpaid bills and things like that. So I thought that was just a team issue when that first came out. So, we tried to shake down the league to confirm that. No one confirmed that. And I thought that was strange because usually if something like that happens to that serious, you want to get out in front of it. So it kind of started with the soul. And then when you see things happening with Iowa, then you see rumors of other teams. I don't want to throw other teams out right now because no one's publicly shared anything.
Mhm.
But then you have an owner of a Billings team whose team is getting paid because he's paying his players and his travel, but he's standing up for the other players and other coaches and other owners because he sees what's going on in those meetings. And so, yeah, it started with the Philadelphia Soul, and things kind of just started unfolding. And the crazy thing is, I don't even think that we're out of the woods just yet. I think that there's more going to be coming within the next couple of days or so.
That is interesting. And it's tough because you are seeing certain teams in this league who are doing things right. The legacy teams from the AFL's past, teams like Nashville, Orlando, it appears that they're doing things right and they are on, everything's going well. It seems like you almost have two leagues inside one league where you've got three or four teams who are well run on the up and up. And then you've got the rest of the league with the other teams with just, it doesn't seem like there's no cohesion.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is because of the owners that are running that team. So
Mhm.
I know that the league is getting a lot of criticism right now, but I think there's something said about certain owners as well
Yes.
without putting their names on it because sure it takes everyone involved, right? Because if you
Hmm.
look at the Nashville Cats, Jeff Fisher, someone that has extensive NFL experience. So he has that back and he has a good team behind him. Same with Albany, same that you're seeing with Billings, and just other teams I think that you mentioned as well. So, yes, I think you're right. It seems like there's two leagues in one because certain teams have that financial backing from the owners because they put their time and money into this, because they knew that they were going to have to contribute as well. So, I think the issues are the teams that are owned by the league. That's where you're starting to see some of the trouble. So the Philadelphia Soul are owned by the AFL. And then you look at the conditions of Louisiana that you saw those goalposts in Louisiana. They are owned by the AFL. I don't want to say this for certain, but I believe the AFL has some type of control with the Oregon Black Bears, but almost the same situation. So you're starting to see a trend of teams that are owned by the league, but teams that have their good financial backing by their owners, that's the ones that are doing well. So I think that's what essentially what we're seeing right now.
Interesting. You mentioned some of the owners. I know you had put out an interview with the Billings Outlaws owner, Stephen Titus, and he had mentioned that how he'd asked for the resignation of Commissioner Lee Hutton, and he had suggested that Jeff Fisher, who is involved with the national organization, take over as commissioner. Now, do you know if Jeff Fisher would even want to be the commissioner, or is he committed to working only with Nashville? Do you know, Anthony?
I can tell you that I am putting emails out to see it to kind of get his side of things. It's hard to
Hmm.
tell because he's never spoken anything about that. I think he just loves the sport. But as far as because I believe there's two owners now. One, I don't think has publicly endorsed Jeff Fisher, as far as I know. But this is now two owners now that I'm hearing that they want Jeff Fisher. So there seems to be a push to get Commissioner Lee Hutton out and Jeff Fisher in. And I think the main reason behind that is because Jeff Fisher has that NFL experience and they believe that he has those leadership qualities to run an organization. The big thing, NFL Network pulling out of its deal with the NFL. That was a huge blow to the league, because you're talking about exposure for a lot of these players that want to get to the next level. And you're talking about potential revenue to other organizations through advertisements and other television sources like that. So they believe Jeff Fisher can get that deal back because of his image as well, right? So that's it too. That's a big part of selling advertisement if they know someone with that type of celebrity status in the NFL to run a league. So I think that's what's going on. So it's tough to say, but I am reaching out to the Nashville Cats to try to see if we can kind of get his thoughts on that.
That's great stuff. And I saw breaking a couple hours ago from Defector that the AFL's TV deal with the NFL Network did break down due to the fact that there was a lack of money exchange between the AFL and the NFL Network. And if that is true, that's a very concerning thing that the AFL is not paying for production for NFL Network games. And we can confirm this. That's a thing in which, yeah, I would understand why NFL Network would not want to be involved to go through with it if the AFL was not paying for production costs for games.
Correct. And that report, so Arena Cider, we did break the news that NFL Network pulled
Mm.
out of the deal, but the NFL declined to comment further. Now that you see the fact of saying equipment issues, I won't say it's certain that that's the reason why,
Mhm.
but it revolves around that. It revolves around the equipment, communication, just not paying as well. So I think that was the issue there. So yeah, and that's that's a big issue and a big deal that the league has dropped. I think we just have to call it what it is. The league dropped that deal. So now I think you're going to start to see some real pushback from players like you're already seeing now, and I think even more because there's games happening right now on a Sunday. As we're recording this, there's some games happening now. There was a game on Thursday, and
Mhm.
the crowds just aren't there, So that's a big deal. NFL Network doesn't want to show a game that has no one in the stands. So you see all of that happening. It's tough to say that this league will survive with, I don't even know if I give it 3 or 4 weeks. So we got one team down. We'll see what happens after that.
Yeah, that's tough. When you mentioned we have one team now, I know Iowa pulled out, and you have other teams who are discussing folding, and it's such a contrast when you look over and you see how things appear to be better in the IFL and the NAL, and when you see how the AFL is, because they right now have both surpassed the AFL. And remember, years ago, the AFL was the king of indoor football.
Yeah, and it's and I think there's something to be I think there's more discussion to be had and more looking into as far as the operations of this league. One thing that I noticed just doing my research, looked at the staff on the AFL. A lot of people have business experience
Mm.
and law experience. Commissioner Lee Hutton is a lawyer, um, and just things like that, but not many with football experience where I think or AFL experience, people that have been in the previous Arena Football League administration, that can make a big difference where, they can say, here's what went wrong, here's how we make it better. So I think the AFL needs more people from previous consultation from previous uh, AFL leagues. But I think the issue was there. I think this new revived AFL, I guess some people call it 3.0. I think
Mhm.
this new revised, they wanted to make a statement that we're not like the previous ownerships. We want to have something that's new and we're going to show that we're better. But right now, that's doesn't seem to be off to a great start.
No, and one thing I thought interesting was that, I mean, when I first heard about the quote unquote AFL 3.0 coming back, I thought it was a bit ambitious to go right in with 16 teams. Most leagues, when they return or start up, start off with six, eight, maybe even 10. But I thought 16 was a little bit too much. And now you're seeing how it's not working out with that many teams, that much volatility right now. So I wonder if the league may have bit off more than they could chew by coming out of the gate again saying, yeah, we're going to have 16 franchises here in 2024.
Again, yeah, just like how I mentioned how they wanted to make a statement. I think that's a
Hmm.
great point that you made up with the 16 teams. So when you look at it geographically, they wanted the full division. I think this is truly they wanted to separate from previous AFLs that we're coming back and we're coming full speed swinging with 16 teams and we're going to put them in these cities and make it match up and we're going to divide up all of that, all of those things. But I think where that issue was, I think they were more focused on quality than quantity. And excuse me, quantity than quality is what I
Right.
meant to say. And so you see with Oregon, they're playing in a center that's used for like horse racing and it's not meant for indoor sports, right?
Right.
So that looks rushed. It doesn't look like you can look at the boards. There's like cattle. railings that's being used as the boards, which is very dangerous
Of course.
for a impact sport like arena football. If you slam against those gates, someone can get hurt from that. So you have that, communication issues, allegedly not paying their players and coaches when and just the whole bunch of travel as well. So everything just seemed rushed, and it didn't seem like they everything was perfect. And I think you're right. It should have been 4 to 8 teams, maybe 8 teams where you'll have four on the West, Midwest, the West, four in the East or something like that, or things like that. Something to balance it out. And then once you get the attention back, once you get the trust of the fans back, then you can start adding teams periodically. You have one team, Arizona, the Arizona Bandits, I believe their name is. They're expected to join next year. I don't know. It's hard to say that
Oh,
they still
wow.
are after seeing what this is going on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little bit surprising to hear that more teams would be in consideration when you have a team that's already folded and the entire league might be going down, but potentially a couple of weeks you mentioned, Anthony. So I'm not sure why you wouldn't want to focus on stabilizing what you have right now before trying to add more for 2025.
Correct. Yeah. And I think this year, I remember sharing on X like a
Mhm.
couple of weeks before the season. I said the AFL should really cancel this season and take a year off. So that way they can evaluate, make sure these venues are set. You had Louisiana changing venues a couple of days, or I think it was like a week before the first home game. You had the
Mhm.
Philadelphia Soul not having Philadelphia Soul were handed termination papers on Friday, like 2 days before their game. So now the league contacted the AL team to play for them, and they got their travel and things like that, or at least the owner got their travel. So you have that. You had Oregon not really set up, and now there's schedules shifting around, times are changing around. We had that many movement at one time. It's just a recipe for disaster. So I think the best thing for the league, I think right now, is to shut it down while you can, because I don't know if I don't know how you help this get any better anytime soon.
Yeah, no. And the story that's already so bizarre and so strange, it's coming out that Lee Hutton may have not paid for the AFL trademarks. Apparently, he signed a licensing agreement, him and Travell Gaines signed an agreement, and they did not pay for the trademarks, which are controlled by an ownership group that is out in Toronto. So the twists and turns are just even more bizarre here, Anthony.
Right. Yeah. And that's a tough situation. I did see that tweet. I reached out to them for more information and comment. They haven't reached back out yet. So that's something that I didn't dive into necessarily. It's something I'm looking into for sure. Um, but so I can't say for sure that that's true or not true, or
Mm.
that anything like that. But what I do know is that it just looks worse and worse. Whether it's true or not, all of these accusations look bad, and it's not good. And this is not the attention you want in a revived league. When the biggest issues that happened with the AFL over the years was it wasn't even just pay, it wasn't broadcast rights, it was the fans, right? The fans,
Yeah.
the fans are part of AFL. So the fans have lost trust in the AFL because they've seen teams drop off, or it goes from when I started Arena Insider in 2014, there was about 12 teams, went down to eight, eventually
Hmm.
went down to four, then eventually just collapsed altogether. That was what happened in 2019. So a lot of fans are like, is this going on? Then you got AFL involved in lawsuits from previous. So all of this, you're trying to, and you're coming back, this is where, because I have journalist experience. I used to be a reporter and also have my day-to-day job as a public relations specialist. So speaking from both job aspects, I can tell you that transparency is super, super, super important. So not seeing anything is you're making people lose more and more trust. That's why you're starting to see things come out more and more because people are frustrated. You have to be out in front of it, even if it's not true, even if you say we have been paying the players. you have to say that. You can't just go silent, so that just makes you look guilty.
Yeah, no, I agree 1,000%. Before I let you go on, I do want to ask you, have any players who have been cut or have left the AFL found jobs elsewhere in our football at all?
Yes, and there's a couple of players actually. I know one player, the quarterback from the Philadelphia Soul, who was released. He signed an IFL contract. I can't remember the teams, but he signed an IFL contract. The kicker for the Philadelphia Soul, he recently signed an IFL contract as well, who I spoke with. There's a couple of other players that wanted to remain anonymous with me, but they let me know that they signed IFL contracts. I believe one of the teams from Southwest Kansas, one of their players signed NFL contracts. So that's promising. I like seeing that. And,
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of the day, it is about the players too, players and the coaches, but the players are dedicating their time. They're trying to make that step to the next level. They're trying to get us any or some people just love just to play. They just love arena and they love the sport. So all of it is important. So I think that's good to see that they're getting signed and getting contracts because that's the core of the AFL. It's kind of like that stepping stone because you have coaches that have players in the NFL and in the CFL and all of that.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It really is about all the players. And Anthony, thank you again for coming on Avery Sports Show. Got to do it again sometime. I thank you for giving me the information, filling me in, because I'm sure there's people out there in the sports world want to know what's going down with the AFL right now. You're as plugged in as anybody down south right now, man.
Sure, absolutely, anytime. And I think I would just say to keep watching. I think more and more will start to happen, and I'm working on some more interviews and stories. So keep you on a loop on that, and we can always talk AFL whenever.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony.